This also, people may have heard about this concept of a simple cafeteria plan, and of course, simple is a loaded word here. It actually is fairly complicated, but beginning next year, an eligible small employer, and that would be one averaging 100 or fewer employees during either of the 2 prior years, can establish one of these so-called simple cafeteria plans. The advantage to doing so, the reason that some small employers might want to do so, is it gets you out of some of the non-discrimination rules. And some really small employers where certain key employees, certain business owners have been limited as far as how much they can run through the cafeteria plan, especially because of a so-called 25% concentration test. This plan might be of interest to them because it gets you out of you automatically satisfy the non-discrimination rules. The cost, though, and because there's, for every benefit there's going to be a cost, the cost is certain minimum eligibility requirements and some employer minimum contribution requirements. So just like simple IRAs require employers to contribute certain amounts, either across the board or on a kind of a matching basis, similarly, a simple IRA cafeteria plan will require some minimum contribution, like 2% of compensation is one of the possibilities, or a match type approach. And we don't have time to get into the details there, but you can do some research and find more about what kind of rules would come into play with a simple cafeteria plan. It's a new kind of cafeteria plan, and it's not clear to me how many employers are really going to embrace it and go with it. Probably not that many, but for a few smaller employers that are having problems with these non-discrimination rules right now for cafeteria plans might well be attracted by this and go for it. Uh-huh. Yeah. My understanding is that it's really going to be on a household basis. I think it's total reimbursements per employee for the year. So I don't think it. I've not seen any.
Well, yeah, but if both spouses are employed,
if they're both employed, 2 different plans, then I think you can probably. I believe so. I've not read anything that would limit it to the household. I think it's limited to the per employee, per plan.
And then when you're referencing, we have a lot of part-time staff.
A lot of what?
A lot of part-time staff that are not in the benefit eligible position. When you're talking about 100 or fewer employees, are those benefit eligible employees or staff?
I think for the most part, these rules, when they count, whether you're a large employer or a small employer like entitled to this, they look at full-time employees, but there's typically a full-time equivalency type approach. So if you have, part-time employees, like, 2 half-timers would add up to 1 full-timer. So you could still, even if you have a lot of part-timers, you could get over the threshold, which may be a good or bad thing depending upon which thing we're talking about here. That's the general approach they take for this in terms of counting employees. And also one thing on a slide one thing I want to mention that's not on a slide before I forget though too is there's new Form W-2 reporting requirements that you may have read about already too that are going to begin next year. In other words, with the W-2s for 2011, which you'll provide to employees in January of 2012, you'll be required now for the first time to in the information box on the W-2 report the value of the health insurance coverage you provide to your employees and their families and their dependents. So they're not going to be it's not a taxable income, but it's just a reporting requirement. So the government's going to now, for the first time, beginning with the 2012 W-2 reporting year, find out, get more information about the value, actual value, at least the value as you see it, value you put on. But for the most part, you're probably going to be encouraged to use the COBRA rates, I think. I don't think that's officially required, but that's the approach the IRS has taken for valuing coverage in other contexts so far, and I think Tim will talk about that a little bit more when it comes to adult dependent children coverage. But COBRA single person premium rates, for the most part, is sort of the IRS stamp of approval for fair market value of coverage of one person anyway.
Question?
Less the 2% administration fee?
I'm sure.
I don't know. Maybe.
I wouldn't think that
probably so.
That doesn't play into the value.
Probably
of coverage,
so.
Right?
Yeah, probably less the 2% administration fee for this purpose. That would make sense anyway. Not that everything, makes sense. in this law or other laws. I think one last slide for me to cover, and then I'm going to hand things over to Tim, and then you'll get to listen to him more than me, which and give me a chance to rest and get to look at, again, photogenic Tim. Insured plans, insured group plans must be non-discriminatory as to eligibility and benefits after for plan years beginning after September 23rd of 2010. Must establish non-discrimination requirements that currently apply only to self-insured plans. So, and again, this though rule is not applicable to grandfathered plans. So this is only going to be new plans. But that's kind of an important enough requirement. I thought I should mention it because right now, if your self-insured plans are subject to a certain non-discrimination rule that's intended to make sure that it's not primarily benefiting highly compensated individuals. And for the first time, new insured plans are going to be subject to that same kind of requirement, the 105H requirement us tax attorneys refer to it as. Okay.